If there were schools that were graduating people who were jumping into jobs, being sought after, and they could demonstrate that, there is, believe it or not, and this is talk about it. I mean, even a pilot program doesn't work in education. There's a reformation, a good thing happens, and then that person goes someplace else. In 1994, 1995, I went to a school in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It's a girls' college called Vernal College. It was a former convent for nuns prior to the 1970s, when all the Catholic vocations went away, and the president called every faculty together, the whole faculty together, every other Friday. And one department had to stand up at each one of these meetings and would say, why would you be part of a liberal women's education? This was everybody. History department, math department, English, they had nursing program. Everybody had to say this. And what they found is that not only were they teaching their discipline, they were also teaching what they call competencies. This is what they wanted to teach: thinking, communication, and teamwork, and being able to be something they call global perspective. So they created a matrix faculty where you not only were appointed to the history department or the math department, you were also appointed to one of these competency faculty. So your job was to teach communication throughout all 4 years of their college experience. And every class had a communication level. So freshman classes were communication level 1, 1.1, and they had rubrics and assessments for these things. They really took the building of these skills seriously. By their report, those graduates were snapped up immediately as soon as they got out into the job market. And what the employer said was, these women know what to do about the problem. When I give them a job, they just go do it. They're not waiting around to be told. They don't have to be motivated. They don't, sure, they're motivated, but they don't have to be handheld. They don't have to be told how to do it. They're those enterprising people. Has that model been replicated anywhere else? It started in the 1970s, and it hasn't been replicated. So even the good stuff doesn't get replicated, because the mindset and the politics and the money and the law, and as I said, parents and taxpayers' preferences are to just kind of squeeze the system down, get teachers to work a little harder, get a little bit more accountability scores, whatever. So, what it takes, I wish it did. Sorry. Other questions? Yes, please. Kirby. Yes. Let's go back to productivity. It is easier. Newsweek doesn't have to use resources like paper and print and ink. It doesn't have to put those things, those material things, on airplanes and trucks and get them all over the country. They can post them on a website and their job is done. If you talk about productivity, the cost of that goes way down. Now, will anybody pay for that online? That's the big question. Pay for a physical magazine, a physical newspaper. Will they pay for it online? I mean, if you were to do a survey of how many people read the newspaper, and I'm just making numbers up, I would say that 80% of the people who read physical newspapers today are over 50. And that people under 30, if you found 10%, 5%, I mean, our kids are all they're getting news. They're reading more than we ever did before. They're reading more than we did because they have access to the New York Times and the Washington Post and Newsweek and, whatever else, Field and Stream and, whatever your agricultural thing. They flip. They jump from here to here to here to here to here. They don't read as deeply because they have so much more to cover. So they're zooming through this stuff, touching a website, touching this, getting this piece of information. They're pretty smart, but it's not that they're not reading. They're not reading physical stuff. And electronic book sales surpassed physical book sales last year. There are more books sold today and this year than ever before in history in the United States. People are buying books. They're reading them. And increasingly, they're reading them on an iPad or a Kindle or a Nook. And that's reading. It's the same brain function, but it's a different medium. Yes, sir, please.
employee will have to submit to a DNA test to become an employee for a company,
What would be the purpose of the DNA test?
so that the company might be able to find somebody with the proper DNA to do all the things that you have.
Well, the way I think DNA works is that those things do not come built in. They are learned. So this is a largely environmental. Now there are people, we have, for instance, there are introverts and extroverts, right? And I believe that's personality. We have a personality test for that. And sure, being an introvert, you act differently than being an extrovert. Both of them have success. You don't have to be one or the other. But it does shape the way you behave. So those, I think DNA probably has some effect on that. But in terms of those things, these are skills that are learnable, and they're all almost completely functional environment. Now, if a person is a recluse and a hermit, then they'll never learn these things. And if their DNA, maybe if they're autistic, well, of course they're not going to learn those things. Or they are so other-oriented and so outside the box and so much an extrovert that they never listen to anybody, well, then they're not communicating and working in a team either. So they're not going to learn those things. So out there on the extreme, maybe the genetics would have some. But for the bulk of the 90% of the people, if we were in the environment that I'm talking about, then we would have students who are graduating that I think would be highly competitive in the world of the future, where they're losing competition to overseas workers.